Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. Thanks for tuning in today. Our topic is about a hidden killer that many people have never even heard of called uric acid. And if you have heard of it, you probably don't know what it is. My guest today is Dr. David Perlmutter, author of the book Drop Acid, The Surprising New Science of Uric Acid, the Key to Losing Weight, Controlling Blood Sugar, and Achieving Extraordinary Health. Dr. Perlmutter, welcome to the program.
Hi, Lori. I'm really happy to be back.
So I love the title of your book, Drop Acid, for those of us of a certain age.
It's an attention getter, that's for sure.
For those of a certain age, we know that dropping acid is slang for taking LSD, something that's very bad. But in this case, dropping acid means dropping levels of uric acid in our body, which indeed is a very good thing, right?
That's right. This is not your grandfather's uric acid in the day. And, traditionally, we've talked about uric acid being something that's elevated in what we call gout, when you have gouty crystals forming in your toes and fingers and it's painful. And that's really been the only context that we've recognized the importance of uric acid. Over the past 20 years, some incredible research has revealed that uric acid elevation is a director of our metabolic problems, like elevating our blood pressure and our blood sugar, for example.
And, it's really interesting. You are on the cutting edge of so many scientific discoveries, so many health trends. I remember so many years ago, you were the very first person I ever interviewed about the gut microbiome. You were one of the first people to ever talk about the importance of having good bacteria in our gut. And now good bacteria is practically, that phrase is practically a household phrase. Everybody pretty much knows what it is and knows the importance of it. And so now here you are talking about uric acid, which really isn't anything on the radar, but hopefully it will be. So
the interesting thing is, this was written about back in 1898, about uric acid being important well beyond gout. And now, again, there's 20 years worth of research that is starting to come to light that's letting us know that it's really in our interest to get our uric acid levels under control. When they are elevated, this leads to obesity, at least weight gain, elevation of our blood pressure, elevation of our blood sugar. So this uric acid understanding becomes a powerful new tool for each and every person watching this broadcast. Because if we get our uric acid under control, we have a leg up. We've got a new tool to help rein in those metabolic problems. And let's be very, very clear. These metabolic issues like the blood pressure and blood sugar and body weight are really critical for us to get under control, because they set the stage for really all of those chronic degenerative conditions that we don't want to get, like coronary artery disease, type 2 diabetes, and yes, even Alzheimer's. So this has become a powerful new tool, uric acid.
So what exactly is uric acid?
Uric acid is the end product, the metabolite, or what remains when our bodies break down three things, only three things, and they are alcohol, something called purines, which are the breakdown product of DNA and RNA in the foods that we eat, but by far and away, most importantly, uric acid is what remains when our bodies break down fructose sugar. Now, that doesn't mean we can't have fruit, because fruit is delivered in such a way, the fructose with fiber and vitamin C, et cetera, that it doesn't really impact increasing our uric acid levels. But fructose in the form of soda, as it is added to so many of our foods these days, and even in fruit juice, bombards our body and sends a signal, a survival signal that says raise uric acid, because our ancestors needed higher levels of uric acid to survive. It caused their bodies to make extra body fat so they could survive when they couldn't find food, when calories were scarce. We sure don't need that now. We don't need to be packing on the pounds. So this becomes that final tool for people who really think they've done everything to get their blood sugar under control, to get their weight under control, to help lower their blood pressure. Finally, this last part, getting your uric acid level under control, really can help bring them to the goal that they're seeking. So This is a common blood test that can be done in any doctor's office. I've also been doing it at home. You can buy a home uric acid monitor. I have one on my desk right here, a home uric acid monitor, and you check it much as you would check your blood sugar. There's my most recent level, 4.7, which happens to be in the good range. We want to keep our uric acid level below 5.5. Now, a doctor might say that, well, anything below 7 is a good level, but that really only relates to gout. 5.5 is the magic number. We go about lowering our uric acid first and foremost by identifying all of the sources in our diets that have fructose. Where is the fructose coming from? A lot of other things that we can do, and we'll talk about that.
So, what are some common levels? You talked about the ideal level of uric acid, but what are some common levels? If people measure their uric acid, what are they likely to see?
Well, unfortunately, uric acid levels are going up year after year and kind of in lockstep with our ever increasing consumption of sugar. Around the 1920s, the average uric acid level in humans was about 3.5. Now it's north of 6. That's already in the danger zone as it relates to cardiometabolic problems, like I've mentioned, the weight gain, the blood pressure issues, the increased blood sugar. We sure want to avoid that. So again, a level above 7, many doctors will say that's when you have to be concerned. And what the new literature is telling us is we want our uric acid levels below 5.5 if we want to be healthier as it relates to controlling these important factors like our blood sugar. You know, close to 40% of American adults are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. And in and of itself, that's a problem. But diabetes really sets the stage down the line for all kinds of things that we don't want to get, like heart disease, like Alzheimer's, brain deterioration. Lori, you and I have talked about that for many, many years, really about keeping our blood sugar under control. And this is yet another powerful new tool, and it's really very, very straightforward.
So, you really demonize fructose in your book, and you say that fructose is kind of the enemy when it comes to uric acid. Talk about where we find fructose. And is it the same thing as high fructose corn syrup? We know that's bad.
Well, we've known it's bad, but we really haven't known why. In fact, for many years, fructose or fruit sugar was the recommended sugar because it didn't immediately impact insulin, unlike glucose. And people would say, well, just eat fructose, fruit sugar. Sounds like a good idea. Not really. We've known about the metabolic threat of fructose since 1970, when the first article appeared in the journal The Lancet. And it's important to look at the context by which we imbibe our fructose. I mentioned earlier, when it's packaged in fruit, that's where the name comes from, fructose, fruit sugar, it's actually relatively safe and has no impact on uric acid if we don't consume an excess amount of fruit. Yes, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, but five apples a day and the doctor you'll pay, meaning you can overdo it. But by and large, eating an apple, the fructose is released slowly because of the fiber. There are chemicals called bioflavonoids that help reduce uric acid formation. And even the vitamin C helps us excrete the uric acid. So eat an apple or two a day, and that'll actually be associated with a lower uric acid. But apple juice, on the other hand, powerfully bombards our body with this fructose, this fruit sugar. And as you mentioned, this high fructose corn syrup as a sweetener has even more fructose than typically table sugar. Table sugar is 50-50 glucose and fructose, but high fructose corn syrup is even sweeter, has much more fructose. And, you know, when you realize that more than 60% of the foods in the grocery store that carry a barcode, all the packaged goods, have added sweetener, we're getting fructose now left, right, and center. The average American is consuming 55 pounds of sugar each year, and that's signaling our bodies to prepare for winter, to make fat, store fat, increase blood pressure, and increase blood sugar, all mediated by the downstream effect of this fructose, which is uric acid. And it's fairly straightforward to identify this and then to fix it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and be right back with Dr. David Perlmutter, author of the book Drop Acid, The Surprising New Science of Uric Acid, the Key to Losing Weight, Controlling Blood Sugar, and Achieving Extraordinary Health. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Healthy Living, and we are continuing our discussion about uric acid and how to lower our uric acid levels with Dr. David Perlmutter, author of the book Drop Acid. So, Dr. Perlmutter, you talked about measuring our uric acid levels. Can you talk about what that involves? You said that there's a home kit that a tool that you can use at home. Are you supposed to check your levels every day?
No, I think that uric acid doesn't vary as quickly as blood sugar. So every couple of weeks, and frankly, once people get their uric acid under control, it could be every month. When they are able to identify those triggers for uric acid, which are actually very straightforward, once it's under control, it's something you don't need to be involved with every day like you would, for example, looking at your blood sugar. These days, of course, you don't need to even do a finger stick for blood sugar, since we have what are called continuous glucose monitors that you can actually wear. But, getting back to why this is so important, a very profound study was published back in 2009. It was a massive study, 90,000 adults, 42,000 men, 48,000 women. They followed these people for 8 years. And what they recognized at the end of the 8-year period was that those individuals with the highest uric acid had a significant increased risk of what is called all-cause mortality, meaning death from any cause. There was a 15% increased risk of death from any cause in the group with the highest uric acid, and an astounding 39% increased risk of death from some form of heart event during that 8-year period, a 35% increase of death from stroke. And what was really compelling was for every point elevation above 7, there was an additional 8 to 13% risk of death from any cause in the group with the highest level of uric acid. So, that speaks to me. Everything, Lori, that you and I have talked about for years now has been centered upon two important things. First, prevention, keeping people healthy, giving them the tools to be healthy or regain their health and then maintain their health. And second, the really fundamental role of our metabolism, metabolic health, as it relates to cancer, heart disease, brain health, et cetera. And this uric acid, I seem a little excited because it's really exciting news. And, frankly, other countries around the world have been a little bit ahead of the United States in terms of understanding the science and implementing it in terms of helping people regain their health. But now the word is out, and we have scientists around the country who are deeply involved in this research, publishing great research, and giving people the tools to first check their uric acid levels and then how to fix it when we see that it's generally elevated.
And so, again, how do people check it? You mentioned before you can go to the doctor's office and get a blood test. Does the doctor normally check a person's uric acid levels?
Great question. And yes, generally as part of the annual blood work, where you have a 20-unit panel, uric acid will appear on that. Why? Again, in the context of gout. So a high uric acid level, very high, the doctor might say, gee whiz, your numbers are up, you're at risk for gout. Well, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of our time together, this is not your grandfather's uric acid. This has far more implication than simply being a risk marker for gout. A 2015 research paper, a collaborative study from researchers in Turkey and Japan, was entitled Uric Acid in Metabolic Syndrome, From Innocent Bystander to Central Player. So this is mediating so much of what we've talked about over the years. This is the actual mechanism whereby a high-carb diet or eating a lot of salt, for example, in the diet can ultimately stimulate inflammation, damaging our cells with what are called free radicals, increasing our blood sugar, our blood pressure, and turning on our body's fat generation.
Are there people who are perhaps normal weight and feel like they're pretty healthy who have high uric acid levels?
Yes. In fact, people can look good and have all kinds of metabolic issues. They can even have accumulations of fat around their organs that can be threatening. We call these people TOFI. TOFI meaning thin outside, fat inside, meaning though they look good, they can have not only high uric acid levels, but they can have high blood sugar and be pre-diabetic or even full-blown type 2 diabetes and look pretty darn good. That's generally not the case. I think we know how to identify people who are at risk. I've often said that one of the most powerful tools in the doctor's toolkit for identifying people at risk for diabetes and high uric acid, for example, is the tape measure. Put it around the waist and make a measurement, and that'll really identify who is at risk. But as you well point out, everybody needs to know their risk markers, not just for uric acid, but certainly for blood sugar and their average blood sugar, their A1C as well. So even though people may these days be a little more reluctant to visit the doctor, it's important, the years are going by. It's important that we have these measurements done, and we do everything now, especially now, to rein in our metabolic health, keeping our blood sugar under control, keeping our blood pressure under control, and certainly keeping our waistlines where they need to be. And what an exciting new tool as it relates to weight loss. This is controlling our uric acid. It's why we create in the book something called the Love Diet, lower uric values, and how to eat in such a way that it caters to lowering that uric acid value and therefore opening that door that we all deserve to being healthier and living a longer, healthier life.
All right, we're going to take another quick break and be right back with Dr. David Perlmutter. The book is called Drop Acid. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Healthy Living, and we're continuing our discussion with Dr. David Perlmutter, author of the book Drop Acid. Dr. Perlmutter, so talk about some practical ways people can lower their uric acid levels. You spoke specifically about getting rid of fructose in our diet. How do we recognize that and get rid of it?
Read labels. And in the book, of course, as you would expect, we list all the different names that are used for sugar added to our foods to get the sugar into our foods so that we like them. Eating sweet traditionally has been something that's proven a survival tool. It makes us make fat, and it identifies foods, at least in the past, that were safe. So reading labels, we're going to give you those tools. It also means considering the type of alcohol a person might drink. But, beyond that, that's the inputs into uric acid formation. I'd like just to mention how a couple of key supplements are associated with a pretty dramatic ability to lower uric acid. They include what's called a bioflavonoid named quercetin. And quercetin, a dosage that we're recommending, any health food store would have it, about 500 milligrams a day. Another nutritional supplement, also a bioflavonoid, is called luteolin, Luteolin, and that is a dosage of around 100 milligrams per day. These two are pretty darn effective in terms of lowering uric acid. Fruit in moderation is totally fine. Eat lots and lots of vegetables, especially those that are fiber rich. Certain meats are high in what are called purines, and as such might threaten to raise the uric acid level. Things like organ meats, for example, liver and kidney, are high in purines. That can threaten uric acid. But, keep in mind that you're not going to know where you are unless you get tested. And anyone can go on to an online site, whichever one you're comfortable shopping at, and uric acid home monitors are there. They're not expensive. And this is something that everyone needs to identify and follow, and then be able to determine how effective their program is and how much further it needs to be modified.
What about intermittent fasting or eating at certain times? Can that help lower your uric acid levels?
Well, we actually have a whole chapter in the book dedicated to the notion of intermittent fasting because it's such an important additional tool to regulate and basically improve your metabolism, improve your blood pressure, improve your blood sugar, improve even your risk for gaining weight. Intermittent fasting means compressing the time of day that you are actually eating. So yes, what you eat is really important. We've talked about that so much over the years. But when you eat is very important as well. In other words, how many hours in the day are you eating versus how many hours in the day are you not? In other words, having dinner, finishing dinner at 6, 7, 8 o'clock, and then not eating until 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock the next morning is a very important way to further improve your metabolism as it relates to heart health, blood sugar control, brain health, risk for Alzheimer's. These are the keys.
Very important. Okay, we're going to take one final break and be right back with Dr. David Perlmutter. The book is Drop Acid. Stay tuned.
Stay connected with CBN News all day across our platforms.
Welcome back to Healthy Living. We're continuing our discussion with Dr. David Perlmutter, author of the book Drop Acid, the importance of dropping our uric acid levels. And I really wanted to talk again, Dr. Perlmutter, you're a neurologist and you're so interested in preventing Alzheimer's. Talk about the risk of Alzheimer's as it relates to uric acid levels.
Well, again, anything that increases inflammation in the body is going to increase the risk for Alzheimer's. We know in various studies that people with high uric acid have a dramatic increased risk for brain degeneration. One study out of Japan, 12 years in the making, evaluated people during that 12-year study. Those individuals with the highest level of uric acid had an 80% increased risk of dementia, a 55% increased risk of specifically Alzheimer's, and a 166% increased risk for what is called mixed or vascular blood supply dementia. So it's very real. It's very important, very threatening to the brain, my area of interest. And the reason we focus on getting this information out is because we don't have any pharmaceutical intervention that can help Alzheimer's. It is a disease for which we have no mainstream medical treatment. No prescription works as yet. I would be so grateful for the day that we would have something, but for now, we got to do everything we can to prevent Alzheimer's, like we have to prevent diabetes and coronary artery disease and even cancer. And one of our new very powerful tools is controlling our uric acid.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. My thanks once again to Dr. David Perlmutter. Great to see you. Dr. Perlmutter, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you, Lori.
And once again, the book is called Drop Acid, The Surprising New Science of Uric Acid, the Key to Losing Weight, Controlling Blood Sugar, and Achieving Extraordinary Health. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.